Welcome, welcome, welcome. We are talking politics and religion without killing each other. I am your host, Corey Nathan. It is an honor to be a part of the Democracy Group, a network of podcasts that examines what's broken in our democracy and how we can work together to fix it. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel and, of course, follow us, review us, remember those reviews, and join our Patreon. We have links in the show notes to make all of this stuff easy to find, and it all helps. So we can continue having great conversations and think through important ideas like the one I wanted to explore today that's about democracy and decency. Democracy and decency. That's really what so much of this moment in time is about. But I'll get to that in a second. So first, I just want to say Happy New Year. I hope it's a happy one for you. I actually took some time off. It was really nice. I was able to go through all the conversations we had last year, share some of the highlights with you. Maybe you saw some of them. It was also a time to reflect on all that's happened over the last year, think about where we are right now, and consider what's to come. Now, it's easy. That's not the right word. It's tempting. It's kind of natural to think about the election and to start to allow all of our feelings about last year and this next year get all wrapped up and sort of defined by the results of the election. But I think that's a mistake. I mean, I'll admit that I've allowed how I feel about the election results or how I feel about a conversation I'm involved with online affect how I'm feeling throughout the day. And it affects how I interact with people in my life. And honestly, it's just not good. So I've been trying to catch myself when that happens, take some time out, take some deep breaths when I have to, and get some better footing on what's real. And what's real is that, yeah, this stuff is important. Who's running our country does have an effect on our lives, but not as much of an effect as the people we live with. Actually, it doesn't even have as much of an effect on our day-to-day lives as our local and state representatives. So keep all of that in mind. But the national conversation is important. Being able to have the conversation at all is important. And how we have the conversation is super important. That's where the decency comes in. Basic decency. And it's also about democracy. One of my favorite writers, David Frum, put it better than I could. This is part of what he said in a piece that he wrote for The Atlantic on the anniversary of January 6th. He said, "Not all of us have to live in the world of Washington transactions. Some of us need to volunteer to keep talking about the inconvenient things." Keep talking about the inconvenient things, he said. Trump really did try, by violence, to violate the first rule of constitutional democracy: respect elections. Again, it's about democracy. Our core democratic institutions, our most sacred American traditions. And on this January 6th, the one that just passed earlier this week, unlike the one in 2021, we have an outgoing administration that's chosen to respect the results of the election and are participating in the peaceful transfer of power. This outgoing administration has chosen basic decency and our democratic traditions. In 2021, we didn't have that. So for me, that's been the central priority when it comes to how I'm voting at the national level. Now, you know I've been talking to folks who've come to different conclusions. I've been coming to understand how any number of people have any number of reasons and issues that take prominence for them, whether it's the cost of living, what's happening in Ukraine and Israel and other parts of the world, or a lot of other folks, actually a whole lot of other folks are casting what I think of as anti-partisan votes, meaning their primary focus is how much they've come to hate what they perceive as the other side. And I get it. I don't necessarily agree, but that's how some of my friends feel. They feel like they've been under attack nonstop for many years by what they think of as the woke left or the PC police or some general impression they have about DEI. Even if they can't articulate what DEI is or what CRT is, but they're just tired of being told how they should think and how they should talk and what they should believe based on identity issues like race and gender and other categories like that. So I get it. I get that there are millions of people who ended up casting a vote at the national level for reasons other than the ones that are most important to me, which again, for me, is about democracy. And it's actually at a more fundamental level about decency. Um, Masha Gessen had a great essay in the New York Times that came out about a week after the election that tied these two ideas together. Masha was quoting a Hungarian politician. I'm bringing it up now, Balint Magyar, and forgive me if I'm mispronouncing that. The Hungarian politician, again, his name is Balint Magyar, I think. And this is Hungary, which it's seen democracy emerge and blossom, only to be threatened by what's referred to as democratic backsliding over the last few years. But Masha said, this is from Masha's piece. For those bewildered by why so many Americans apparently voted against the values of a liberal democracy, Belint Magyar has a useful formulation. Liberal democracy, he says, offers moral constraints without problem solving, a lot of rules, not a lot of change, while populism offers problem solving without moral constraints. Liberal democracy offers moral constraints without problem solving, while populism offers problem solving without moral constraints. And that's definitely a dynamic that we've seen. We've discussed at great length the epic anti-moralism of Donald Trump himself, as well as the way his not just amoralism, but anti-moralism has metastasized and is mimicked by so many of his acolytes in Congress, so many of the individuals he's naming in his incoming administration. And now we're seeing it with social media companies that are contorting their own standards as a way to adapt. We've certainly seen it with the entire media complex that supports him. Look no further than the way the leading figures across broadcast media, online and podcasting, have talked about the violence of January 6th, January 6th, 2021. They either tried to memory hole it like it never happened, use distractions by using just standard like whataboutism, these made up claims about Antifa or these other conspiracy theories, or the one that really bugs me the most. It's really troubling. There's justifying violence. This is what you get. This is what happens. Types of excuses. And I can attest to it personally. It's the same kind of language that was directed at me just over the last couple of days. Yeah, many times over the last several years, but just over the last couple of days, a so-called friend on one of the threads I was moderating about January 6th, he said, and I'm quoting here, he said, if you don't want another January 6th to happen, then you had better. Now, I don't care what comes next. I had better what? Do whatever the hell he's wanting me to do? If you don't want another January 6th, then you had better what? Comply with whatever the hell he's threatening me with, or there'll be another January 6th? I'll tell you what that's not. It's not democracy. And it sure as hell is not decent. Basic decency. In another comment, the same fella said, we are a republic. We may have to shed blood. We may have to shed blood? Look, I've talked about this before. I've told you this. I've shared this story before. The other time I've heard these types of words is when I had to intervene with a guy at church. We were in a Sunday school class together, and this fellow was having what I now understand to be a psychotic break. And he was in a fit of rage. He was getting violent with his kids. He was getting violent with his wife. And when we got there, he was screaming, "This is what you get. This is what happens." I'll never forget those words. I'll never forget his demeanor. It's the same language that's being used to talk about January 6th. This is what you get. as if the violence was justified. And there are these ongoing threats that there's going to be more of that sort of violence if they don't get their way. So again, for me, it's about democracy and it's about decency. So the question is, what can we do about it? What can we do about it? One thing is we can vote. We can vote. And when we vote, sometimes our candidate or our issue wins. And that's great. But sometimes they don't. And when they don't, the first thing we can do is model the proper behavior. Model the proper behavior means we respect the results of the election. And that doesn't mean we have to shut up. It doesn't mean we lose our rights to free speech. It doesn't mean we lose our rights to free assembly, freedom of redress of grievance, all the other rights granted to us by the First Amendment and the rest of the Constitution. So the other guy won. That's how it goes sometimes. It sucks for me, for someone who cares about our democratic institutions in this case. But for others who voted based on other concerns, let's see how it works out. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't think it's going to work out particularly well on so many levels, and I hope I am wrong on that account. But that's not anything I can control. What I can control is my own actions, starting very close to home. What I can control is simply in how I interact with loved ones, friends, neighbors. What I can control is how I simply have conversations with people around my dinner table or at the coffee shop or in my business group. We talked about this last year when David Brooks came on the program. David brought it up again in a piece he wrote recently. It reminded me of the conversation we had. Um, this piece came out again. It was just after the election. It was titled "Why We Got It So Wrong," and he said, "Seeing groups in all their complexity. In this case, groups such as anybody who voted for Trump. I didn't vote for Trump. A lot of folks know that." But seeing any types of groups, Democrats, Republicans, Trump supporters, liberals, Democrats, religious people, non-religious, whatever, seeing groups, but in all their complexity requires seeing individuals in all their complexities. This is what David Brooks said in his piece. Seeing groups in all their complexity requires seeing individuals in all their complexity. To see people well, you have to see what makes them unique. You also have to see which groups they belong to. You also have to see their social location, where they fit in the economic, social, and status hierarchies. When you're able to see people at all three levels of reality, you're beginning to see them holistically. So that's about decency, seeing someone's humanity, like David Brooks is talking about here, who they are individually, who they are in terms of which groups they identify with, and where they are socioeconomically. That's seeing someone contextually and uniquely. It just takes practicing basic decency to try to see people that way. So we can vote, exercise our agency in this democratic republic, and that includes accepting the results of elections that don't go our way. We can see the humanity in others, practice seeing them contextually and fully. And for me, the other thing I can do is to know when to walk away. There are some folks that I just can't reach. There are some people who've simply gone to a place that's beyond my limited abilities to understand or continue to empathize with. There are some lines that are just too far. I was talking to Wajahat Ali earlier today. It's a conversation I'll share with you in a few days. Um, there's a line somewhere, right? And that line is kind of like what Judge Potter Stewart said about porn. I know it when I see it. I can't necessarily define it for you, but I know it when I see it. So I can vote, I can see the humanity in others, and I can know when to walk away, to live to fight another day, or to live to love another day. So what is this moment about? It has been, it is, and for this foreseeable future, these coming weeks and months and probably years, it's about this democratic republic, our democratic institutions, American democracy, and it's about decency, basic decency. And I'll just leave you with that. So please remember to follow this show, write that review, and now you can watch this conversation on YouTube, all these conversations on YouTube, and support us on Patreon. It's youtube.com/at politics and religion. And Patreon is patreon.com/politics and religion. Check them all out. Subscribe, get some TPNR swag. Your support, your follows, your reviews, it all really does make a difference. So thank you for all of it. Now, go talk some politics and religion with gentleness and respect, and have a great week.